In the journey of life, we often accumulate habits, thoughts, and influences that can quietly weigh us down, preventing us from reaching our true potential and living with peace and fulfillment. It's essential to periodically reflect on what might be draining our energy or adding unnecessary stress to our lives. In this video, we will explore 10 key lessons on how to release what no longer serves us, creating space for personal growth and happiness. Lesson 1. Overcoming the fear of others' opinions. The fear of what others think of us is one of the most common and pervasive fears we face. This deeply ingrained fear often stems from our early social conditioning, dating back to childhood when we learn to seek approval from parents, teachers, and peers. As we grow older, what starts as a natural desire for acceptance can evolve into a paralyzing fear of judgment. We begin to mold our actions, decisions, and even our sense of self around the expectations of others, striving to fit into a mold that we believe will gain their approval. Take Sarah, for example. She had always been a people pleaser, constantly preoccupied with how others perceived her. Whether it was a simple decision about what to wear or a more significant choice regarding her career, she spent countless hours agonizing over how it might be judged by friends, family, and even strangers. This endless loop of worrying about others' opinions kept Sarah stuck in a life that felt inauthentic and unfulfilling, preventing her from following her true passions or exploring what really made her happy. But one day, something shifted. Sarah stumbled upon a quote that resonated deeply with her. "What other people think of me is none of my business." In that moment, she had a light bulb realization. She had been allowing her fear of judgment to hold her hostage, keeping her from living the life she truly desired. This newfound awareness became the catalyst for a profound change in her outlook. Determined to reclaim her life, Sarah began working on embracing her authenticity. Instead of basing her choices on what she assumed others wanted or expected, she started making decisions that aligned with her own values and desires. At first, it was uncomfortable and even scary, but with each small step, she learned to trust her own instincts. Over time, she gained the courage to stand firmly in her truth, even when it conflicted with what others thought. As Sarah slowly let go of the need for external validation, she experienced a sense of freedom and peace that had previously felt out of reach. She began surrounding herself with supportive individuals who encouraged her to be her true self. And while it wasn't always easy, she learned to release the opinions of those who didn't have her best interests at heart. Through this journey, Sarah discovered something powerful. Most people were too busy focusing on their own lives to constantly judge her every move. The heavy weight of trying to live up to others' expectations began to lift, and in its place, she found a newfound sense of joy and fulfillment. Living authentically not only brought the right people and opportunities into her life, but also made room for her to let go of the burdens that came with trying to please everyone. By overcoming her fear of others' opinions, Sarah unlocked a path of self-discovery and personal growth. She began to embrace her unique qualities, quirks, and passions, recognizing that they were what made her truly special. With each step she took toward authenticity, she felt lighter, freer, and more at peace, both with herself and the world around her. What she had feared most, judgment, had become irrelevant. Instead, she discovered that by being true to herself, she could live a life that felt more meaningful and aligned with who she was at her core. Lesson 2. Releasing toxic relationships. We all have relationships in our lives that bring warmth, love, and support, but sometimes we also encounter relationships that drain us, criticize us, or hold us back. These toxic connections, whether they are with friends, family, or colleagues, can silently undermine our well-being over time. David had been friends with Mark since childhood. They had shared countless memories and experiences together, and David considered Mark to be one of his closest confidants. However, as they grew older, David began to notice a shift in their dynamic. Mark had become increasingly critical and dismissive of David's goals and aspirations. He would often make snide comments or discourage David from pursuing his dreams, leaving David feeling small and unsupported. At first, David brushed off these incidents, chalking them up to Mark's abrasive personality. But over time, he realized that the negativity was taking a toll on his mental and emotional well-being. He found himself dreading their interactions and feeling drained after spending time with Mark. One evening, after a particularly hurtful exchange, David decided it was time to reevaluate their friendship. He recognized that a true friend should uplift and support him, not tear him down or hold him back. With a heavy heart, David initiated a conversation with Mark. He expressed his feelings honestly and directly, setting clear boundaries and expectations for their relationship moving forward. To his surprise, Mark was receptive and apologetic, acknowledging that his behavior had been unacceptable. Together, they worked on rebuilding their friendship on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. Mark made a conscious effort to be more supportive and encouraging, while David learned to communicate his needs and boundaries more effectively. Through this experience, David realized that releasing toxic relationships was a vital part of his personal growth. He learned to surround himself with people who truly had his best interests at heart, and to let go of those who consistently drained his energy or held him back. As he cultivated a circle of positive, uplifting friendships, David found himself thriving in ways he never had before. He felt supported, valued, and free to pursue his dreams without fear of judgment or criticism. Lesson 3. Letting go of self-destructive habits. Self-destructive habits are behaviors that undermine your health, happiness, and productivity. These might include procrastination, unhealthy eating, or spending excessive time on social media. While they may seem harmless at first, these habits can gradually erode your well-being. Emily had always been a high achiever, pushing herself to excel in every area of her life. However, behind closed doors, she struggled with a self-destructive habit that threatened to unravel all her hard work: procrastination. Despite her best intentions, Emily found herself constantly putting off important tasks, waiting until the last minute to complete assignments or prepare for presentations. The stress and anxiety of looming deadlines took a toll on her mental health, leaving her feeling overwhelmed and inadequate. One day, after narrowly meeting a crucial deadline, Emily decided enough was enough. She realized that her procrastination was not only hindering her productivity, but also robbing her of peace and joy. Emily began to explore the root causes of her procrastination. She discovered that it often stemmed from a fear of failure or a need for perfection. By delving deeper into these underlying issues, she was able to develop strategies to overcome them. She started breaking larger tasks into smaller, more manageable steps, setting realistic deadlines for each one. She also began to practice self-compassion, reminding herself that mistakes and setbacks were a natural part of the learning process. As Emily let go of her self-destructive habit of procrastination, she found herself experiencing a greater sense of accomplishment and fulfillment. She no longer felt the constant weight of unfinished tasks hanging over her head, and she was able to approach her work with a clearer, more focused mindset. Through this process, Emily learned that releasing self-destructive habits was not about perfection, but rather about progress. She discovered that by treating herself with kindness and understanding, she was able to cultivate a more positive, productive relationship with herself and her work. Lesson 4. Relinquishing excessive control. The need for control can be a major source of anxiety. While it's natural to want to have a grip on our lives, trying to control everything, from outcomes to other people's actions, can leave us feeling frustrated, stressed, and disappointed when things don't go as planned. Michael had always prided himself on his ability to control every aspect of his life. From his meticulously organized schedule to his carefully curated social circle, he believed that the key to success and happiness lay in maintaining a tight grip on his circumstances. However, as life began to throw unexpected curveballs his way, Michael found himself struggling to cope. A sudden job loss, a family member's illness, and a string of personal setbacks left him feeling helpless and overwhelmed. In the midst of this turmoil, Michael had a profound realization. His need for control was not only futile, but also detrimental to his well-being. He recognized that life was inherently unpredictable and that trying to control every outcome was an impossible task. With this newfound awareness, Michael began to practice letting go. He started by focusing on what was within his control: his own thoughts, actions, and responses, and releasing attachment to external circumstances. He learned to embrace uncertainty, trusting that he had the resilience and adaptability to navigate whatever challenges came his way. Instead of rigidly adhering to a predetermined plan, he allowed himself to be open to new opportunities and unexpected paths. As Michael relinquished his grip on control, he discovered a sense of freedom and peace he had never experienced before. He no longer felt the constant pressure to micromanage every aspect of his life, and he was able to approach challenges with a more flexible, open mindset. Through this process, Michael learned that true power lies not in control, but in surrender. By letting go of his need to dictate every outcome, he was able to cultivate a deeper trust in himself and the journey of life. Lesson 5. Realistic expectations. Many people set themselves up for disappointment and frustration by holding on to unrealistic expectations. These expectations can be related to various aspects of life, such as relationships, career, personal achievements, or even daily experiences. When reality doesn't match these high standards, it can lead to feelings of inadequacy, disappointment, and dissatisfaction. Jennifer had always dreamed of having the perfect relationship. She had a clear picture in her mind of what her ideal partner should be like. Always understanding, eternally romantic, and never arguing with her. When she met Mark, she was convinced that he was the one who would fulfill all her expectations. However, as their relationship progressed, Jennifer began to realize that Mark was human, just like her. He had his own flaws, quirks, and bad habits. There were times when they disagreed, and moments when the romance seemed to fade into the background of daily life. At first, Jennifer felt disillusioned and frustrated. She wondered if she had made a mistake or if there was something wrong with their relationship. But then, she had a moment of clarity. She realized that her expectations of perfection were not only unrealistic, but also unfair to both herself and Mark. No relationship could ever live up to the idealized version she had created in her mind. With this understanding, Jennifer began to shift her perspective. Instead of focusing on what was lacking in their relationship, she started to appreciate the real, imperfect love they shared. She learned to embrace Mark's quirks and flaws as part of what made him unique and lovable. She also began to communicate her own needs and desires more openly, rather than expecting Mark to read her mind. As Jennifer let go of her unrealistic expectations, she found that her relationship with Mark became stronger and more authentic. They were able to weather challenges and disagreements with greater resilience, knowing that their love was based on acceptance and understanding. Through this experience, Jennifer learned that cultivating realistic expectations was key to finding happiness and satisfaction in all areas of life. By releasing the burden of perfection, she was able to embrace the beauty and richness of the imperfect, authentic journey. Lesson 6. Releasing the need to always be right. The need to always be right is a common trait that many people struggle with. It often stems from a deep-seated fear of being wrong, or a desire to maintain a sense of control and superiority in relationships. However, this rigid attachment to being right can lead to unnecessary conflicts, strained relationships, and a lack of personal growth. Alex was known among his friends and colleagues as someone who always had to have the last word. He took pride in his intelligence and extensive knowledge, and he often found himself engaging in heated debates and arguments to prove his point. However, his insistence on always being right started to take a toll on his relationships. His friends began to avoid discussions with him, knowing that they would inevitably end up in a frustrating and unproductive argument. His colleagues started to see him as arrogant and unapproachable, which hindered his professional growth. One day, during a particularly tense meeting at work, Alex had a sudden realization. He noticed that his need to be right was not only causing friction with his team, but also preventing him from considering alternative perspectives and ideas. With this insight, Alex made a conscious decision to start letting go of his attachment to being right. He began to practice active listening, focusing on understanding others' viewpoints rather than immediately formulating a counter-argument. He also started to embrace the idea that being wrong was not a sign of weakness, but rather an opportunity for learning and growth. When he found himself in disagreements, he would ask himself, is it more important to be right or to maintain a positive relationship? As Alex released his need to always be right, he noticed a significant shift in his interactions with others. His friends and colleagues began to see him as more approachable and open-minded, and he found that he was able to have more productive and meaningful conversations. Through this process, Alex learned that letting go of the need to be right was not about compromising his beliefs or intelligence, but rather about recognizing the value of humility, empathy, and collaboration. Lesson 7. Tuning out digital noise. In today's digital age, we are constantly bombarded with information, notifications, and endless distractions from our devices. While technology has brought many benefits and conveniences to our lives, it has also created a new form of noise that can be overwhelming and detrimental to our well-being. Sophie was a successful entrepreneur who prided herself on always being connected and available. Her phone was constantly buzzing with notifications from social media, email, and various messaging apps. She felt compelled to respond immediately to every ping and alert, fearing that she might miss out on something important. However, as time went on, Sophie began to feel increasingly drained and unfocused. The constant digital noise was taking a toll on her mental and emotional well-being. She found herself struggling to concentrate on important tasks, and her creativity and productivity were suffering as a result. One weekend, Sophie decided to take a digital detox. She turned off all her notifications, put her phone on silent, and committed to spending the entire weekend offline. At first, she felt anxious and restless, wondering what she might be missing out on. But as the hours passed, Sophie began to experience a newfound sense of peace and clarity. Without the constant interruptions and distractions, she was able to focus on the present moment and engage fully in the activities she enjoyed. She spent time reading, going for long walks in nature, and having meaningful conversations with loved ones. She rediscovered the joy of being fully present and connected to the world around her, without the constant pull of digital distractions. After her digital detox, Sophie realized that she needed to make some permanent changes to her relationship with technology. She began to set clear boundaries around her device usage, designating specific times for checking emails and social media, and creating device-free zones in her home. She also started to prioritize offline activities and face-to-face interactions, recognizing the importance of cultivating authentic, human connections. As she tuned out the digital noise, Sophie found that she was able to reclaim her focus, creativity, and overall sense of well-being. Through this experience, Sophie learned that while technology can be a valuable tool, it is essential to maintain a healthy balance and to be intentional about the role it plays in our lives. Lesson 8. Challenging negative thoughts. Negative thoughts are a natural part of the human experience, but when left unchecked, they can have a significant impact on our mental and emotional well-being. These thoughts can range from self-doubt and self-criticism to worst-case scenario thinking and rumination on past mistakes. Marcus had always been a high achiever, but despite his many successes, he often found himself plagued by negative thoughts. He would criticize himself harshly for even the smallest mistakes, and he constantly worried about potential failures and catastrophes that might occur in the future. These negative thoughts began to take a toll on Marcus's mental health. He found himself feeling anxious, stressed, and depressed, and his self-esteem and confidence were suffering as a result. One day, Marcus confided in a close friend about his struggles with negative thinking. His friend suggested that he try a simple but powerful exercise, challenging his negative thoughts. At first, Marcus was skeptical. He had always assumed that his negative thoughts were simply a reflection of reality. But with his friend's encouragement, he decided to give it a try. Whenever a negative thought arose, Marcus would pause and ask himself, "Is this thought really true? Is there evidence to support it?" He began to recognize that many of his negative thoughts were based on assumptions, exaggerations, and worst-case scenarios rather than reality. He also started to practice reframing his thoughts in a more balanced and realistic way. Instead of thinking, "I'm a complete failure," he would tell himself, "I made a mistake, but that doesn't define me as a person. I can learn from this and do better next time." As Marcus continued to challenge and reframe his negative thoughts, he began to notice a shift in his mindset. He became more resilient and self-compassionate, and he was able to approach challenges and setbacks with a more balanced and optimistic perspective. Through this process, Marcus learned that while negative thoughts are a normal part of life, we have the power to challenge and transform them. By developing a practice of self-awareness and self-inquiry, we can cultivate a more positive and empowering mindset. Lesson 9. Decluttering physical and mental space. In our fast-paced, consumer-driven society, it's easy to accumulate clutter, both in our physical spaces and in our minds. This clutter can take many forms, from piles of unused possessions to mental baggage like unresolved emotions, limiting beliefs, and unfinished tasks. Julia had always been a bit of a hoarder. Her home was filled with piles of clothes, books, and knickknacks that she had accumulated over the years. She had a hard time letting go of things, even if she hadn't used them in ages, because she always thought she might need them someday. But as the clutter in her home grew, Julia began to feel increasingly overwhelmed and stressed. She found it difficult to relax in her own space, and she often felt a sense of guilt and shame about the state of her surroundings. One day, Julia stumbled upon a book about minimalism and decluttering. As she read through the pages, she had a profound realization. The clutter in her home was not only taking up physical space, but also weighing her down mentally and emotionally. With this newfound awareness, Julia decided to embark on a decluttering journey. She started by tackling one small area of her home at a time, sorting through her possessions and asking herself whether each item truly added value to her life. As she let go of the things she no longer needed or used, Julia began to experience a sense of lightness and freedom. Her physical space became more organized and functional, and she found that she was able to think more clearly and focus better without the distraction of clutter. But Julia didn't stop at decluttering her physical space. She also began to examine the mental clutter that had been weighing her down. She started to practice mindfulness and self-reflection, exploring the thoughts, beliefs, and emotions that were no longer serving her. She began to let go of old grudges, limiting self-beliefs, and unfinished projects that had been hanging over her head. As she decluttered her mind, Julia found that she had more mental and emotional space for the things that truly mattered to her. Through this process, Julia learned that decluttering is not just about getting rid of physical possessions, but also about creating space for growth, clarity, and peace of mind. By letting go of what no longer serves us, we make room for new opportunities, experiences, and ways of being. Lesson 10. Breaking the comparison trap. In the age of social media and constant connectivity, it's easier than ever to fall into the trap of comparing ourselves to others. We see curated images of people's lives, their successes, and their seemingly perfect relationships, and we can't help but measure ourselves against these idealized standards. Liam was an aspiring artist who spent countless hours scrolling through social media, looking at the work of other artists in his field. He couldn't help but compare his own art to theirs, and he often found himself feeling inadequate and discouraged. He would see other artists receiving recognition and opportunities that he could only dream of, and he began to doubt his own talent and potential. The more he compared himself to others, the more stuck and paralyzed he felt in his own creative journey. One day, Liam had a conversation with a mentor who helped him recognize the dangers of the comparison trap. His mentor pointed out that comparing himself to others was not only unproductive, but also unfair, as he was often comparing his behind-the-scenes struggles to others' highlight reels. With this realization, Liam made a conscious decision to shift his focus away from comparing himself to others and instead concentrate on his own unique creative path. He began to set personal goals and celebrate his own progress, rather than measuring himself against external standards. He also started to cultivate a sense of gratitude for his own journey, recognizing that every artist has their own unique story and set of experiences that shape their work. Instead of seeing other artists as competition, he began to view them as part of a supportive and inspiring community. As Liam let go of the need to compare himself to others, he found that he was able to approach his art with a greater sense of freedom, authenticity, and joy. He no longer felt burdened by the pressure to measure up to others' successes, and he was able to embrace his own creative voice and vision. Through this process, Liam learned that breaking free from the comparison trap is essential for personal growth and fulfillment. By focusing on our own unique path and celebrating our own progress, we can cultivate a sense of self-acceptance and purpose that is not dependent on external validation. The journey of letting go of what no longer serves us is a continuous and ever-evolving process. As we move through life, we will encounter new challenges, beliefs, and patterns that may hold us back from living our most authentic and fulfilling lives. By embracing the lessons of overcoming the fear of others' opinions, releasing toxic relationships, letting go of self-destructive habits, relinquishing excessive control, cultivating realistic expectations, releasing the need to always be right, tuning out digital noise, challenging negative thoughts, decluttering physical and mental space, and breaking the comparison trap, we can create space for growth, healing, and transformation. It's important to remember that this journey is not about perfection or achieving a state of complete freedom from all negative influences. Rather, it's about developing a greater sense of self-awareness, compassion, and resilience in the face of life's challenges. As we continue to let go of what no longer serves us, we open ourselves up to new possibilities, experiences, and ways of being in the world. We become more attuned to our own needs, desires, and values, and we are better able to create a life that is truly authentic and fulfilling. So let us approach this journey with curiosity, courage, and compassion, knowing that each step we take towards letting go is a step towards greater freedom, peace, and joy. May we have the wisdom to discern what no longer serves us, the strength to release it, and the openness to embrace the new opportunities that arise in its place.